The Lakers versus Nuggets playoff game one takes place in a few hours. So I would just like to make my prediction about how I feel the series is going to go, who I think is going to win this series. I just want to throw out a few stats from both teams, basic stat line. So when I look at the Lakers, they have five guys who are averaging double figures in scoring during this playoff run. LeBron leads the team in scoring at 23.4 points per game on 49% shooting, and he's getting 10 rebounds along with that. Anthony Davis, he's averaging 21.2 points on 53% shooting and 14 rebounds per game. I think the 14 rebounds per game is pretty amazing. That takes a lot of energy to do that while scoring 20 points. So he's been playing out of his mind during his playoff run, more so on the defensive end than the offensive end, but he's still doing a lot on the offensive end to be scoring 20 points a game. He's been a major anchor for the Lakers defense, I feel. He's been great on rotations and switches. He may be the best defensive player left in this whole entire playoffs when you think about who's remaining. So that's how elite he's been on the defensive end, and he's been above average on offense, obviously. And when you look at the Nuggets, they have actually six guys scoring in double figures, with Nikola Jokic being their lead scorer at 30.7 points per game. He's shooting 54% overall from the field, 47 from three. He's averaging 12.8 rebounds per game, 9.7 assists. These are like Wilt Chamberlain numbers he's putting up. This is a really dominant playoff run by him. If the Nuggets win the championship, I feel this is going to be one of the most dominant playoff runs in NBA history by an individual player. It's definitely going to be, I think, in the top 10 when you look at his stats. They're just out of this world amazing. Then you have Jamal Murray, who's also doing pretty good during the playoffs. He's averaging 25.9 points per game on 46% overall shooting from the field, 39 from three. So he's been really good offensively. He's doing a pretty good job. He's also averaging 6.5 assists. So Jokic is not the only guy on this team who has playmaking capabilities, as Murray has been showing during the playoffs. A lot of people are picking the Lakers in this series, and I think they're basing it off of their most recent run right now, their two upsets they pulled off in these two rounds, and what they did 3 years ago to this Nuggets team. But I think basing off of 3 years ago is kind of foolish to some degree. The teams are slightly different, and the players are at different parts of their careers now. I feel a few years ago that was Jokic before he hit his prime, right before it. And I feel Jokic is now at the peak. He's a better player than he was 3 years ago. He's just much better. He's improved in every facet of the game. He can read defenses even better. He knows when to dominate. He has it down now. And I feel Murray is now playing at that high level he was playing at a few years ago. He may be even better than what he was a few years ago from what he's done in the playoffs. LeBron is still pretty good, but I don't think he's what he was 3 years ago. I feel he was right at the tail end of his prime 3 years ago. Now he's past his prime. Great, he's not washed up. He's still playing at a high level, but he's not what he once was, at least even a few years ago. AD was actually more dominant against the Nuggets a few years ago. I'm just going to bring up the playoff stats for a few years ago of these two teams. Let me just pull that up. Just give me a minute. I should have this up pretty soon. Okay, I'm bringing it up right now. So let's just look at the stats a few years ago. So when these teams met up in the playoffs, Anthony Davis averaged 31 points and 6 rebounds on 54% overall shooting from the field. LeBron averaged 27 points, 10.4 rebounds, 9 assists on 53% shooting from the field. He was on fire. One thing I find funny is they had KCP as their third leading scorer in that series a few years ago, 11.2. He's not on their team anymore. He plays, ironically, for the Denver Nuggets right now. So LeBron and AD, I think they played at the highest level you can imagine both of them playing in a series. I don't think they're going to replicate that again, but let's look at Jokic's stats against them a few years ago. In that playoff series, he averaged 21.8 points per game on 53% shooting overall from the field. He got 7.2 rebounds, 5 assists. So Excuse me. So they did a good job in containing Jokic, I felt, a few years ago, but huge part of that was because they had Dwight Howard, who averaged around 20 minutes per game in that series. And if you watch that series, there were times when Jokic would have perfect position, but they were able to stop Jokic from being able to successfully get in position because Dwight's super strong and they would come with quick doubles with AD. So they had the perfect combination to hit him at. Dwight was really a thorn, I felt, for Jokic. He could slow him down, and he was crucial. He was one of the few guys, even at that time, that was strong enough and big enough that Jokic couldn't get easy position. He was also more athletic than Jokic. He could keep him off the boards, and he could really put a limit to how much Jokic could dominate. So you had him, and then you had AD with a good doubles whenever they were playing those two together. And then you had JaVale McGee, who was very long, super athletic. So I felt they had the best combination a few years ago to handle Jokic. Right now, I don't think they have that defensive combination to throw at him like he did a few years ago. There's no guy that can serve the Dwight Howard type of role in this matchup. They have Hachimura, Vanderbilt, Tristan Thompson. I feel all those guys are just not strong enough like Dwight to put up any resistance against Jokic from getting post position. I also don't think any of those guys are long enough as JaVale McGee was to really bother him with length and athleticism. So I think it's going to be very difficult for them to have the same success that they had against Jokic a few years back. Jokic, I expect him to average 27 to 30 in the series, to average 10 to 14 rebounds, to average somewhere between 8 to 10 assists. I think he's going to be a lot more dominant than he was a few years ago. I think Murray will probably play at the same level he did a few years ago. When you look at his numbers, he was averaging 25 points, on 51% overall shooting overall from the field. He got 7.4 assists. So I think he'll put up similar numbers. I just think the difference this time around is Jokic is going to be so much better. I think the Nuggets team is better now than they were a few years ago with what they have. So I think that you got to factor that in there. I think they're more experienced. They're just more seasoned now. Also, a few years ago, that series was very close, even though it went to only 5 games. I felt had AD not hit that game-winning 3 in Game 1, that could have been a 6 or 7 game series. You look at how much the Lakers averaged against them a few years ago. It was 113.6 points per game, while the Nuggets averaged 109.2. So it was very close. I just think the Lakers had a little bit more talent. LeBron obviously was still in his prime, so he was still the best player in that series. You had to give that to him. I just think it's going to be different now. And, yeah, I have the Lakers losing this series in 6 games. I do think Denver will prevail. Denver is going to win in 6. So that's what I have. Denver in 6 games, and that's about it.